you're setting your slides, you think you're cool. All right, great. Ah, yes, that makes sense. Okay. Yeah, well, we have enough people here. I think we'll probably go ahead and get started. So, welcome everybody in person, anybody who just tuned in online to the latest monthly installment of the EFF-Austin Meetup. My name is Kevin Welch. I'm the current president of the board at EFF-Austin. See a lot of familiar faces and a few new ones. Welcome all. For those who are new and are like, what is EFF-Austin? Well, as you might guess, we're based in Austin, and we are a long-standing digital civil liberties organization. We work closely with Electronic Frontier Foundation out of San Francisco. They're the nation's oldest and largest digital civil liberties advocacy group. You can kind of think of them as the ACLU for the internet. They work to protect your rights in emerging technological spaces, especially your First Amendment right to free speech and expression and your Fourth Amendment implicit right to privacy. Yeah, they do a lot of good work. They've been involved in fights around net neutrality, end-to-end encryption, Section 230 of the CDA, and just trying to make it where technology can be a source that empowers human flourishing. So yeah, they're good people. I suggest you go check them out and learn more about them if they're new to you. Yeah, we are, as I said, we work closely with them, though we are a distinct legal entity. We are the oldest member of what's known as the EFA, or the Electronic Frontier Alliance, which is kind of a group of peer-to-peer activist network group of about 100 different orgs all across the United States. None of us are formally legally affiliated with each other, but we all are kind of united in sharing similar values to the EFF, and we all advocate for similar issues at the usually the city and state level, while EFF tends to more focus on national lobbying and legislation. So yeah, main thing we do is educational. We have these meetups once every month, currently the second Tuesday of every month at 7 p.m. here at Capitol Factory, normally in the Devi meeting room, which is around the kitchen, though we are in Voltron this month. Yeah, we, as I said, we're always looking for speakers who want to talk about topics that might be at the intersection of technology, law, society, or even just people just doing interesting things with computers. We love to profile interesting digital art, all sorts of stuff. So yeah, if you want to give a talk, or you know somebody who might want to give a talk, by all means, send them our way. Yeah, and I know that our next talk in June, actually our board member Nate is going to be talking with us. Nate, what did we say we were talking about again?
Smartphones.
Right, we're going to do privacy of smartphones. Yes, so if you want to learn more about how your phone is absolutely not private and how you might get it a little more private, Nate's going to have a fun talk for us. Yeah, so that's what we got coming up next month. We also just, when funds, time, and ability allow, we sometimes throw some fun parties. We usually have an annual holiday party and an annual South by Salon of some sort. This year at South by we had a very fun one, had a number of luminaries in this space, had Cory Doctorow, Louis Rossman, and a number of other interesting people in the digital celebrity space. So yeah, we do those. Usually they're cyberpunk themed and they're fun, a lot of interesting people. We also do, believe it or not, do a little bit of rabble-rousing legislatively, both at the city and state level. We've been very involved in discussions at the city level over trying to rein in automated license plate readers. We've had moderate success getting some greater regulation there. We'd rather that the city wasn't using them at all, but we are happy that we have nonetheless gotten some stronger privacy rules around how they can use them in place. We also have been involved in discussions at the city and state level around AI regulation, both the good, the bad, and the ugly. And yeah, been watching a number of bills in the ledge, which is drawing to a close here. And yeah, so that's a little summary of us and what we do. As I said, we're very much a community-run org, so if you want to get involved, we'd love to have you, because we have talented people and we punch above our weight, but we always want to do more, so get involved. Let's see, I think I've given you the spiel, so I will probably, in just a sec here, introduce and turn things over to our speaker. I'll also just ask if anybody has any announcements they'd like to share with the community. It is entirely welcome. Even shameless self-promotion is totally allowed, as long as you think it'd be relevant to our community. So if anybody would like to share an event or news or anything going on, feel welcome. If not, it's cool. I am pulling up my intro for our speaker, and then we will get going here. Let's see, where do I have that? Yes, yes. And if I can't get it in a sec, I will introduce. All right, here we go. So anyway, yeah. So our speaker this month is our friend Manton Reece. For those of you who follow IndieWeb or Fediverse stuff, you may already know who Manton is, but Manton is the founder of Micro.blog, a blogging platform and social network based on IndieWeb and Fediverse standards. They launched in 2017, and they've grown into a full blogging platform with support for social web protocols like ActivityPub and AT Protocol. Yeah, and I was actually inspired by, there was a delightful event at this last South by called Fediverse House, where we had a bunch of cool people in the Fediverse space, people from Bluesky and Mastodon and 404 Media, and a whole bunch of people tracking the IndieWeb and the Fediverse and the decentralized social media movement, you know, giving some pretty inspiring, interesting talks. Manton himself gave a nice talk there, and it just made me realize that it'd probably been, yes, as Manton and I were just saying, probably pre-COVID the last time EFF-Austin and Manton had collaborated on anything. I think we helped out a little bit with their IndieWeb summit they had at this point, like 6 or 7 years ago. Anyway, you know, with the Fediverse and decentralized social media way more in the news these days than back when we last had that gathering, I thought it'd be very interesting to check in with Manton, given everything that's happened in that space, and see both how Micro.blog just fits into the evolution of the space in general these days, and also maybe just gets Manton's very informed opinion about where he sees this movement going. So yeah, without further ado, I'm gonna turn things over to Manton.
Thanks.
Push to talk if it turns off.
Sound all right? Make sure everything's good here. Slides.
And if you're having any issues with slides, I can try to find Elijah, though he may be busy.
It just forgot the
Okay.
whatever I was connected to.
Let me make sure our live stream is all right.
There we go. All right. All right. Thanks everyone for having me. Yeah, it has been a while before COVID when I was down here, but it's such a great space. I'm going to talk a little bit about my background, like where I came from, blogging, the Fediverse, and my approach with my platform, Micro.blog. And I'll have some opinions about social networks in here, and happy to talk more about this with everybody. So a little about me. I'm a longtime Mac developer. It's just me waiting in line for the first iPhone, wearing my I Make Macintosh Software t-shirt, which I still love. iOS developer, web developer, and I got started programming the Mac in the 90s, and still love the Mac, even if I'm less thrilled with Apple as a huge company now. And I've been blogging for a long time, over 20 years. This is my first blog post, and it's actually a short microblog post. And I think there are a couple interesting things about that post that we'll get back to later. But first, I want to talk about social networks. And I joined Twitter in 2006, and it was silly, but I was kind of proud of this 3-digit user ID, like really low in the database. And I just set this, to set the context of, for where I'm coming from, because I was really excited about Twitter in the early days. I built tools for Twitter. This is an app called Tweet Library that I wrote for the iPhone and iPad, and I just saw a lot of potential in the Twitter API back then. I also created the Tweet Marker API. This is a timeline position sync API. It was used by apps like Twitterific, Tweetbot, and dozens of other apps across iOS and Android. And so it was a lot of fun to work on. There's this John Gruber quote that I always go back to from Daring Fireball, where he talked about Twitter apps being a playground for UI design. And we're now seeing this with the Fediverse. Lots of new apps that work with Mastodon and Bluesky. And back then, the word tweet itself came from a third-party app. Twitterific from the Icon Factory was the first to use that, and first to use a bird. It's like these things that we take for granted, and of course that branding has now been swept aside by Elon Musk. But a lot of that inspiration for what Twitter became actually came from third-party developers that were just excited to build something new. Back then, I grew really disillusioned with a series of steps that Twitter took to close down their API. They took what was a vibrant developer ecosystem, they kind of ruined it. And this was before Elon Musk bought the company. They started to discourage certain types of apps. So this was a famous slide they had in a blog post where they talked about, we want apps like on one side, one of these quadrants, like social analytics and maybe media integration, whatever that is, but we don't want anything up here in the upper right, the traditional Twitter clients. And so they did a whole bunch of things to lock down their API. They removed RSS feeds. They required registration to use the API. And they built a lot of that discouragement into the platform itself. So there was actually a limit on the number of auth tokens an app could use. So there was like a ceiling for how popular an app could be. So in this post, they talk about you'll need permission if your application will require more than 100,000 individual user tokens. So that was just a way to limit what apps, third-party apps could do. They started shutting down integrations. This is an article from way back about IFTT, if this then that, losing access to the Twitter API. And it was just frustrating because Twitter was turning their back on developers who had contributed so much to the platform. So I left. I stopped posting back in 2012. It feels like a lifetime ago now. But it kept kind of getting worse. This quote I remember from Buzz Anderson talked about, it feels like it settled into a certain default mode of hostility and rage. And this kind of feels like the whole web now sometimes. Ad-based platforms, these big platforms aren't really aligned well with users and developers. And there's another thing I pulled out from way back, Lindy West writing at The Guardian about the harassment that she's had to deal with on Twitter. She says, I talk back, I'm feeding the trolls, I say nothing, harassment escalates. It may simply be impossible to make this platform usable for anyone but trolls, robots, and dictators. And that was a while back, and I think it holds up really well, actually. There was something kind of broken because Twitter hadn't planned for harassment and these kind of issues that would come up at scale. So Elon Musk accelerated everything. Twitter had been kind of conflicted before. Internally, some people wanted an open API, and Twitter would alternate between these years of having developers really excited about working with third-party developers, people in the company, and then also being very developer hostile. So the pieces for a closed platform were in place before Elon came on, and he just kind of finished dismantling Twitter, but Twitter was always going to be a closed silo, was always going to be a dead end. And so I set out to work on something to kind of solve some of these, work on some of these problems for blogging with a new service called Micro.blog, and it launched in 2017 with a Kickstarter campaign, and it's been slowly growing ever since. And so I'll talk a little bit about that as it relates to the larger Fediverse and these other open platforms. Micro.blog has a bunch of features. At its heart, it's really blog hosting, hosting photos, hosting podcasts, and also some funny side features like blogging about what books you're reading. But everything kind of leads back into blogs. Email newsletters off of blog posts, open APIs like ActivityPub, registering a domain name for you, things like that. And one of the first things that I wanted to focus on was having open APIs. So unlike Twitter and X and making it impossible to have third-party apps, with Micro.blog wanted to encourage lots of apps, and that started with the official Micro.blog apps. These are actually the official Micro.blog apps. There's a suite of apps. Micro.blog is the main app, Epilogue for books, Strata for keeping track of notes that are end-to-end encrypted, Sunlit for photos, and Wavelength was this app we built for kind of quick podcasting. So this is the main iPhone app, simple. I tap post, type a post, it goes to my blog, and the blog can be hosted on Micro.blog, or it can be hosted on WordPress or any other platform that supports an open API. And photo blogging is kind of an important variation of microblogging, right? So we wanted that to be really easy. Feels sort of like using Instagram, and Sunlit is this dedicated app just for photos. Another app that is a third-party app, Indie Uploader. Just an example of like encouraging third parties to build something. It's great. It focused on solving other problems like batch uploading photos and managing collections of photos. And so the Micro.blog timeline brings all these posts together. You can follow users, their posts show up on the timeline, and it's just a reverse chronological list of posts. You can reply, you can view conversations like a social network. But the posts come from RSS feeds. So this post at the top comes from this person's domain name, another post comes from someone else's domain name. That person I know doesn't use Micro.blog. They have, I think, just a homegrown blogging platform, and it's all pulled into the timeline. People are posting to their own domain name first, and then Micro.blog reads the feeds and aggregates everything into a unified social timeline. So what does this look like? Micro.blog just asks for the RSS feed every once in a while and integrates that into the timeline. And except there's lots of blogs out there, right? So it gets very inefficient, and Micro.blog is constantly working in the background to download feeds over and over to see if anything's new. So it's pulling RSS feeds is slow. There's another way a blog can notify an RSS aggregator, in this case Micro.blog, whenever there's a new post. So it's like, ping, I wrote a new post, and then Micro.blog doesn't need to pull that site. It can just get the post right away and deliver it to followers. Of course, we can do better than that. This is where standards can help make some of these platforms more efficient. So in 2018, there was a W3C working group called the Social Web Working Group, and they published several important standards as W3C recommendations. And Micro.blog supports pretty much all of these recommended specs that came out of the working group. There's ActivityPub, Activity Streams, Micropub, Web Mention, and WebSub. Micropub and Web Mention are kind of on the IndieWeb side, and then ActivityPub and Activity Streams are all together. And WebSub can apply to a lot of things, and it applies directly to this issue of polling RSS feeds for changes. So here I have Micro.blog, here I have your blog, and a whole bunch of other blogs. And WebSub adds a hub in the middle. So in your feed, you link to a hub that you will notify about new posts, and then Micro.blog can subscribe to the hub. And then all these other blogs are just telling the hub when there's a new post, and then the hub can notify Micro.blog whenever one of the blogs changes. So it's much faster in notifications rather than waiting several minutes or longer for a post to show up. So it's more distributed because there could also be many hubs. And so I use this example with WebSub to underscore that the social web can weave together many different protocols. It's open, it's always evolving, and sometimes there are little gems of earlier standards that we can build on. So the sources for posts in Micro.blog don't have to be from RSS feeds. They can be from different platforms that were designed around real-time notification of new posts. So like the first example, screenshot up here, this is someone that uses Micro.blog, it's a Micro.blog user. The second one is a Fediverse user. Someone uses Mastodon. You can see their username has a Mastodon-style username. And then the final one is Bluesky users. Micro.blog natively supports all these different protocols, so you can follow all these users directly in one place. And replies from those platforms are also brought back into the blog and social experience of Micro.blog. So if someone replies to this post in Micro.blog or Mastodon, the replies are collected directly on the blog post like comments. So you can see that that's the person's blog, has their short post, and then it has the comments underneath it. So you can post to your own blog but still have a presence on other platforms. So supporting all these different platforms and protocols is possible because of new standards. And there's an emerging social web that doesn't depend on siloed, closed platforms with proprietary APIs. The two big ones that I want to talk about are ActivityPub, which is Mastodon and ActivityPub and the Fediverse, and Bluesky has AT Protocol, Proto, and the atmosphere, they call it, because of the AT. So starting with ActivityPub, this is from the creator of Mastodon. He said, we need something that'll work forever. And he was looking for how he could build a Twitter-like social network with existing open standards. So what he found was there wasn't really one single application, specification. ActivityPub is really a suite of protocols if you want to be compatible with Mastodon and other Fediverse implementations. So The first version of Mastodon actually shipped before ActivityPub was standardized, so it used another standard called OStatus, and then Mastodon kind of seamlessly migrated everyone to ActivityPub. So you have ActivityPub, activity streams, which defines some of the formats that are going back and forth in ActivityPub. WebFinger, which is a super old standard for looking at user info, if you have a handle for them. And then HTTP signatures, which used to verify requests back and forth. So if you want to build something using ActivityPub, you basically have to support all these things. It's not just one standard. So a few of these, so starting with WebFinger, this is technically kind of the first thing that we encounter as users. WebFinger translates email address style usernames that Mastodon uses to URLs. So let's say my handle is manton@IndieWeb.social. That's my Mastodon username. I make a web request to this WebFinger endpoint, passing that, and it comes back with a little JSON and a link to this person's ActivityPub profile. And so the next step is to get that profile, JSON. So I make a GET request to that profile. ActivityPub calls these actors, a URL that identifies a user. And the context at the top, this is actually greatly simplified. It's 50, 100 times longer than this for most users, but JSON LD linked data is used in that context to define certain things. That can, to be honest, it can be almost completely ignored. Often you need to accept header too if you're doing one of these requests, because Mastodon and a lot of other servers, they'll have different types of responses for the same endpoint. So they use HTTP content negotiation. So you say, I really want the application/JSON activity, that's ActivityPub, and then I get this JSON back instead of like a web page for that user. So highlighting one thing, so you can see, like I said, this is much longer in real life, but it has like my full name, has a few URLs, including this inbox URL, which is how we will send activities to that user. ActivityPub gets its name, of course, because there are all these activities that are sent between servers. Create, like, delete, update, follow, announce, move, undo. There might be a couple others, but create is when I'm creating a new blog post. Like, of course, is liking a post. Announce is like reposts, and there's a few others migrating accounts between servers. So you follow someone, and it sends a follow activity to that person. These activities are sent to other servers in the Fediverse. So in this case, I'm creating a new post. It's sending a create out to any of the servers that have people that followed my account. So whether that's creating a new post or following another user, it sends these activities back and forth to the user's inbox. So here's just, again, an abbreviated example of creating a new note. I'm sending an HTTP post to the follower's inbox with the create type, the node HTML for the text. And so this is how communication happens between Fediverse servers. Let's talk about Bluesky and AT Protocol a little bit. As Jack Dorsey said, in principle, I don't believe anyone should own or run Twitter. It wants to be a public good at a protocol level, not a company. And while Jack Dorsey was still CEO of Twitter, he spun off this project called Bluesky. And the goal was to develop an open protocol that Twitter could eventually use itself. And there were a series of, I think, really fascinating decisions that they all seemed to kind of happen at once. Elon Musk was buying Twitter shares, starting that process. Jack Dorsey was stepping down as Twitter CEO. And then Jay Graber, who was on the early group coming up with what Bluesky would look like, was asked to lead Bluesky. And she said she would on one condition: if they could spin out Bluesky into its own company, independent of Twitter. And all of that sort of happened right as Elon Musk was taking over the company and about to shut down the Bluesky project. But it had already been spun out to its own thing. And I think when it started, a lot of people weren't sure. Mastodon was already growing a lot. They weren't sure if another protocol could be successful or why it didn't just use ActivityPub and Mastodon. And I think they've proven a lot of people that they are doing something interesting. So they've grown just a whole lot in the last year. Mastodon has about 8 million users, and then if you count other Fediverse implementations, like 12.5 million. Threads is also starting to enable Fediverse support. Yep.
So you went too fast.
Went too fast, I'm sorry.
No, you're good. But Bluesky did spin off or didn't?
Did, yeah. So it was like, it kind of started like they said, we're just going to get like 5 people together that care about protocols inside Twitter, and we're going to think about like making a new protocol that could be open, that you could have lots of Twitters potentially, or Twitter could use it and other people could use it. There could be some kind of interoperability. And then, I think in hindsight, the smart thing was that when Jay Graber was asked to lead it, she kind of insisted that it be spun out into its own company that was independent.
So she got what she wanted.
She got what she wanted, yeah.
Okay.
And so she leads it now.
Elon Musk took over with.
So, I'm sorry, one more time?
And then Elon Musk took
And then,
over.
yeah, and it was literally, I think it was literally like within a week or something, Elon Musk, so the timing I found very interesting. That's why I wanted to highlight it, because if things had been a little different one Monday afternoon, maybe Bluesky would be shut down. It would not have, 35 million users. Yeah, so I brought this graph up too. These are actually daily posters, just to show the scale and like how it grew. You can see these spikes of when like something happened in the news, or like Brazil banned X, for a couple weeks. You have these big movements of users from Twitter, X to Bluesky. You can see that in this graph of like these big spikes that are happening. So there's a lot of people starting to use it. Of course, it's still a little bit, I'm not gonna say pales, but it is much smaller than, of course, like Meta's platforms, where there are hundreds of millions of users, or more with Facebook. So the architecture of Bluesky and the AT protocol, it's not federated exactly like Mastodon, where you have lots of servers that have their own like little community. But it's not like really strictly centralized either. At the bottom we have what are called personal data servers. I just used a couple examples. But these are where, these hold your posts. They hold your follows. They hold a lot of activity from the network. And by default, like 99% of people right now, because this is so new, they just have Bluesky hosted for you. But you could spin out one of these personal data servers and host it yourself, or you could pay someone else to host it. And then so you have a copy of your data sort of outside the network.
So how many are there? Approximately thousands?
Of the PDSs? I would say
tens, hundreds?
hundreds of thousands, hundreds or thousands, but probably not 10,000. I didn't.
It's not like everyone has their own.
No, it's still very. I would say it's difficult to run your own still. You could. All the code is open source, and you can spin up personal data server PDS yourself. But then you have to make sure you're importing your posts, and there's some things that take some work.
But if everyone has a copy and you can spin out of it, the question becomes, what about the copyright of all the people who wrote blogs? That's
Yeah.
a different issue.
That copyright.
About it later.
Yeah, it is interesting because it's one of the kind of principles behind Bluesky. Well, all the data is public, so it's all not in the public domain. It's just all publicly available. So like, there's no private posts on the network. So there's an expectation that like there's going to be a copy of your posts all over the place.
It's when you sign up, then you actually, does it explain what it explains it or something?
I don't think so. There's probably a link to the terms of service.
I'm curious about this because this has to be about IP. So
I can provide an interesting thing that, that this really is baked into the architecture, because one thing Bluesky runs into sometimes with privacy issues is that they warn you, we can respect your privacy till we're blue in the face, but there's nothing stopping somebody else from going and writing their own client, because the data stream is public and they may not respect your privacy. So we will, but beware.
Which actually, on that topic and your concerns about copyright, that has happened at least once, that there have been companies that hook into the Bluesky, they call it the fire hose, and scoop up all the data and use it to train AI.
okay, so this is interesting for later. Like, I don't want to interrupt you.
It's good. No, and there's definitely a lot of wrinkles in how they designed it. That's certainly one, scooping up all the data for training. And also, there's been some things in the news about their approach to moderation also is kind of putting some of the tools in users' hands instead of being heavy-handed sort of on their server with some things. And so you even have, you have this fire hose of all this content that's available to everybody, and people could make their own app and they could read it. But for example, a couple weeks ago, they were asked by the Turkish government to ban some accounts, and so they're able to toggle that just in Turkey, and just if you're using their app, but you could have another app that didn't follow those same moderation rules, and then you could see the accounts. So it's a kind of a different spin on.
I will actually say that the tagging moderation thing is actually one of the innovations I've found the most fascinating and empowering, actually, because I remember I had a friend who initially, he jumped on there and, he likes to share a lot of photography that, has, enjoys the human body, let's say. And, a lot of social media, even though it's very tasteful, everything he's posting is people consented, they want this. Well, a lot of social media is like, we don't want that here, it gets banned. Initially, he thought Bluesky was doing the same thing, but what's really interesting is, not really. Yes, the system was tagging the content as potentially of concern, but here's the thing. Every end user is in control of what, based on tags, they want censored or not. A user can say, I'm not offended by that, I want to see that. But another user who is, can literally pretend it doesn't exist, actually.
Yeah, and so in that case, by default, maybe those are hidden, but yeah, you just go into the preferences and you,
yeah, as soon as I showed him, it's like, oh, there's my content. There it is.
Yeah, they call it composable moderation, this kind of system they've set up, and I think it's very unique and interesting. So in the middle, just a little more about the architecture. They have these one or more relays, the relay's job is basically to go to all these personal data stores, get all the posts, and then bring them together in this unified fire hose that can then be pushed out to the apps. So at the app level, at the app view in this case, which is the Bluesky app, the relay will send that back, and then the app can do things like figure out how to aggregate, like counts together and make it look like a social network. So it's kind of modular, these different parts of the platform. And there's some resiliency. You could add new relays. You could add new app views, for example, one focused on video content. You could clone and replace Bluesky, if something happened to the company or was taken over by new leadership. So the architecture is kind of modular. There was or still is, a project called, I guess, Free Our Feeds, I think it's called, that was looking to raise money to build up their own sort of mirror architecture of all these things, just in case something happened to Bluesky, or just to kind of prove that you could scale it out and be kind of redundant like that. AT Protocol has a format called lexicons, and a lexicon just keeps all of this data coordinated across all these systems. So it describes what the data in certain formats looks like. So Bluesky has defined a lexicon for short form microblogging. This is just part of it, where it's like it has to be 300 characters. The required fields are text and date. Everything else is kind of optional. There's a thing in here about these facets for character ranges of styled text. So for styled text, there's not like a markup or anything. They have something in the protocol where you can say like the second word is bold, for example. So you can have other lexicons and all the data records for all these different types of data would exist, kind of coexist in someone's personal data server, even if they weren't using an app right away that actually made use of that data. So kind of comparing these two platforms, protocols, ActivityPub federate across many servers. The identity that you have is based on these community servers, so I am at a certain server. Followers and posts can be moved while the servers are online. So if you wanted to migrate from one server to the other, they both have to be up and communicate back and forth that you're moving your account, and then all the followers that you had can be essentially asked to follow the new account. And then it's a W3C, open standard. AT Proto is kind of like a single large app view, but then you distributed data stores. So identity with the domain names instead of the email address style names. And followers and posts can be moved anytime without changing identity. If you have a copy of your data, you can move it somewhere else to another personal data server, and your identity doesn't have to change, your post don't change. So AT Protocol is not yet put in a standards group. It's developed, mostly they just wanted to move fast, I think, and develop themselves, and then they would put it out there. But totally different approach. So now we have many different platforms. We have Mastodon, Bluesky, Threads, Micro.blog, PixelFed, it's a photo sharing, Fediverse platform. And there's many others, right? I was talking about getting posts into a platform like Micro.blog, but what about sending posts out, even if the platform has a proprietary API? How do we tie all these together with blogs?
Could you go
Yeah,
back?
back.
Just respect. So Mastodon, I know it exists. It's kind of Bluesky is the one that you just said spun off as a company. Threads is something that's affiliated with Facebook, I think, or something.
Threads?
Threads
Yeah,
is
Threads,
Facebook.
yeah, Threads is Facebook.
Yeah, and then there's Microblog.
That's mine, Micro.blog.
Okay, so
Yeah.
all of those are different,
They're all different.
but they speak the same protocol?
No, not really.
I'm asking.
Yeah, and that's, yeah, no. They're all different. They don't all speak the same protocol, but there's some overlap. So Mastodon supports ActivityPub protocol primarily. Bluesky is the AT protocol. Threads is its own thing that was spun out of Instagram, really, kind of built on the Instagram infrastructure, but just for text. And it now does support ActivityPub. So you can follow users from Bluesky to Threads. You can follow users from Mastodon to Threads and back and forth. But it's a little limited. It doesn't support everything. I should have been using this. It doesn't.
I would assume Threads does not
Yeah.
export, say an export to another activity
Right,
server.
and that's a big, that's the one thing I've been looking for, is are they gonna go that kind of final step and allow people to move their accounts from Threads to Mastodon, Micro.blog, or somewhere else? Because one of the things they talked about, a year or two now, when they said they were gonna adopt ActivityPub, is this idea that like if they needed to ban someone from their platform or, they should be able to move away, but technically it's not possible. Yeah.
There's a data act in Europe that forces it.
I'm sorry, say it.
If they operate in Europe,
Oh.
there is a European data act that forces you, if you have someone's account and you want to move from one platform to another, you should have an API to allow it.
Yeah.
It's just kicked in this year. So it's a matter of time before the lawsuits will come and force it.
Yeah, and they didn't, I think they waited to launch Threads in the EU probably 6 months or something like that too. And I think it was similar, it was like they were talking to their lawyers about figuring out, if they could comply.
Just real quick, you have some of these other platforms up there.
Yeah.
But when you had a few slides back, you had the user numbers. How many Microblog, how many users is Microblog?
Microblog, still not very many. I don't have it up in front of me. It's actually kind of public data. There's a site called FediDB that tracks, it basically kind of crawls all Fediverse servers and asks them like how many accounts do you have, how many active users do you have. There's a little format called node.info that reports that. So hundreds of thousands of accounts are reported there, I think, but it's not that big because there's a lot of accounts that are not being used anymore. We've had a lot of problems with people creating like spam accounts. So the numbers are a little bit inflated, but Micro.blog is still super small compared to these other people. It's just me and a couple other
I think
people.
it is amusing to think of just the scale of modern centralized social media where here we are sitting going, oh, he only has 100,000 users, how small that is.
And to be honest, that might be totally wrong. I haven't looked at the total user count in a long time. But because we ask people to pay, it's a much smaller number that actually pay. But it's inflated a little bit in the stats because technically there's extra accounts. But
I did actually,
don't quote me on that number.
I did actually meet
should.
someone from the UK one time who uses Micro.blog, and he like nerd flipped out, I knew you actually.
Oh.
He was a big fan.
That's amazing. Wow, that's funny.
Okay, so you showed the slide and your argument was that you want them to communicate, correct?
So it would be great if they all communicated. And to go back and actually answer your question, Mastodon, on this chart, Mastodon, Mastodon, Micro.blog, PixelFed, and Threads all support some version of the ActivityPub protocol. So 4 of the 5 are somewhat compatible. And then Bluesky and Micro.blog support the AT protocol.
So Micro.blog supports ways to communicate with all 4. This
Yes.
is what you're saying, and this isolates it from the other.
Right. So my approach has always been, I wouldn't say always, but when Mastodon came out, I had to sort of make a decision, am I going to try to compete with that kind of platform, or am I just going to embrace it? And so the decision I kind of made is I will support almost any platform that has something that looks like an open API, or they're big enough where users really demand that it's supported. So yeah, so ActivityPub, AT Proto, a couple other different APIs.
So someone who posts a microblog can potentially access all others.
Yes, you can follow someone from all others on Micro.blog. You can reply back and forth. There's some limitations, but yes, that was the goal, is to have one place, because I want to be posting to my blog, just personally. I want to post to my blog. I want to ignore a lot of the social network craziness a lot of the time, but when I dip my toes in, I do want to have one place where I can see replies and I post from basically across the
So
open web.
any other of those 5 will be limited in the ability of interactivity, or more limited than Microblog. Did I say it correctly?
I mean, I'm biased because I build Micro.blog, but
it's not about
yeah.
bias.
Yeah.
Did I say a correct sentence?
you said it correctly.
Thank you.
The one thing I would add to that is there is a service called BridgieFed is the part of the service that applies here, and that essentially creates a bridge between a few different networks, but in this case in particular between ActivityPub and AT Protocol. So if you enable Bridgie to kind of opt in, you can follow a Bluesky user from Mastodon. So that's the asterisk, I think, is if you have a companion service like BridgieFed, it can bridge these 2 protocols because it can support both.
But still, it doesn't access all 4. You gave 5. And
Yeah.
If you show the lines between all of those,
Yeah.
then you have the most lines in Microblog. Did I say it correctly, or did I understand what I said?
Again, I'm biased. I think that's
Not biased.
that's
That's
accurate.
That's fair.
Did
Okay.
I say it correctly?
You said it correctly. Yeah.
Say, change the slides, put the lines.
Put the lines,
People will
yeah.
move to Microblog.
Mastodon and PixelFed are kind of the same thing because they're both run on ActivityPub. They're just different implementations. PixelFed is focused more on images, kind of like Instagram, whereas Mastodon is kind of like more like Twitter. It's microblogging. Threads is doing its own thing, but it does integrate with ActivityPub. Bluesky is off doing its own thing entirely. Microblog is kind of in between Bluesky and ActivityPub, and thus by extension, Threads.
And there are actually several other prominent ActivityPub apps he's
Right.
not mentioning here. There's a
Oh, yeah.
YouTube replacement called PeerTube, there's a Facebook replacement called Friendica, there's a Reddit replacement called Lemmy, etc.
Yeah. This slide is not a complete. But I mean, it's a great. That's one of the reasons I'm so excited right now about the Fediverse and about open APIs. Is there's a lot of people working on interesting things. It wasn't the case back at the beginning when I was complaining about Twitter and closed APIs. It just wasn't the case that you had this kind of activity. So, but the reason I put these 5, to be honest, I picked these 5 a little bit arbitrarily, but I'm glad we were able to talk kind of through how they fit together. The reason I put that really is to talk about like how do we post all these and how can we make kind of make all this work if you have a different identity and presence on different platforms. And one way is called Posse. It stands for Post on Your Own Site, Syndicate Elsewhere. And this is a term coined by the IndieWeb community. And it's about copying posts between platforms. So starting on your own blog where you own your content and then copying it out to different platforms. So in Micro.blog, we have cross-posting to all these services. Mastodon, Bluesky, Threads, PixelFed, Noster, LinkedIn, Flickr, Medium, Tumblr. Noster, I'm not going to talk about. That's another fascinating protocol that could be a whole detour. But a lot of these, when we're not talking about ActivityPub, we're copying these posts. So you already have a LinkedIn account, and we use the LinkedIn API to copy your blog post automatically to LinkedIn.
So into LinkedIn, not backwards.
Not back. So the exceptions to the not back part are Bluesky and Mastodon. So there's a couple different ways you can set things up. One way is you can have ActivityPub enabled, and you don't have a Mastodon account at all. But everybody on Mastodon can still follow your account as if it was a Mastodon account. And in fact, to them, they may think you're on Mastodon. They don't know. And the other way is you have a Mastodon account on a server, like a community you care about, and so you want your post to be copied there. And that's posse. That's cross-posting.
So Twitter, I don't see it on the list here.
Yeah. Twitter, so I supported the Twitter cross-posting. It was actually the first thing that I added years ago. And then, when Elon came, he basically made the Twitter API unusable. Yeah, so at minimum, it costs $100 a month to use the API. And that's there's not a lot of access. For posting, it's not a big problem, actually. The limits are not bad. So for a little while after Elon Musk bought the company and started charging for the API, I actually did pay for it a little while so that my users could migrate away because they were kind of, it was a feature they liked, to cross-post to Twitter. But I couldn't justify paying that anymore. So I don't support cross-posting to Twitter automatically. There is a manual cross-posting that's separate, and it basically just copies your blog post, using a link to Twitter, and then you hit post again on the Twitter website. But yeah, that's if nothing else, what I'm trying to say is that's the problem, is that when these proprietary platforms shut down their API, it makes it very difficult to integrate apps like this.
I have a quick question.
Oh yeah, sorry.
Yeah, so maybe I call them like the legacy social networks, like LinkedIn, the
Yeah.
column maybe.
Yeah.
Are any of them open enough that if you wanted to, you could support pulling posts back in, like from Tumblr or Flickr?
Mhm.
Because I know those were kind of originally built pretty open.
Yeah, Flickr is.
That's actually sort of, I was gonna have a similar question of like, obviously, you couldn't just like get a post ping, but could you manually pull their API
Mhm.
and pull that?
I think some of them, yes. It's just a matter of whether, yeah, exactly. There is so much like API code in Micro.blog pulling from all these platforms, so I feel like we support more than anybody else, but I also have to be careful not to build something that no one has asked for. I'm actually surprised I haven't heard that about LinkedIn, because people that use LinkedIn like for their business or they just like it, they have sent some really good feedback in the past. And I was gonna say Flickr, like you said, when it was like at the forefront of like the Web 2.0, like we're gonna have a open API, so.
For a while,
Yeah.
Tumblr supported the Twitter API, like way back when. I don't know if they still do. I doubt that they still do.
Yeah, I don't know, yeah, I don't actually remember that. That's amazing.
You could use like Twitterific and you could point at your Tumblr.
Yeah, I don't even remember that. Yeah, and the Tumblr API is interesting. I'm sure there's enough flexibility to pull in. I don't really use Tumblr. I never really used it very much, so I don't feel I know it very well enough. Medium, I'm not sure about replies. So we do pull in replies from Mastodon and Bluesky, and then Threads, it is possible to pull in replies, but it's so frustrating to work with Meta that I have not asked for access to that part of the API yet. They're basically when you get approved to use Meta's API, it's a manual, human review. You have to show how you're using it. You usually have to record a video of how your app works, and then they approve specific parts of the API that you're allowed to use. And I was rejected like 3 or 4 times when I first started this, and I was just so frustrated with having to deal with Meta that I haven't wanted to write any more code for them. But it is possible. Yeah. So I think Mastodon and ActivityPub, they deserve special attention again. So in addition to cross-posting, we've already talked, Micro.blog natively supports ActivityPub. It's more integrated into the platform than copying posts. It's not just a copy of posts. with a separate account. It's integrated where they're following your account directly. And the Fediverse is made up of a bunch of servers, right? Dozens of people on some of these servers, thousands on some servers. I don't know if all these are still in existence. This is a random list that I got actually from years ago. But Mastodon is very much based around these communities. But what I really want is just me, personally. I just want my server. I want to return to how web publishing used to work, where you had your domain name as the identity, and that's where you were publishing. If my web host goes out of business or they change their policies, I'm not happy with them anymore, I can move my site, nothing will break, right? I find a new place to put my site, different hosting company, I point the domain name to the new site, everything just works. And I've done this several times over the 20 plus years of blogging.
Continue your idea. I have something about publishers. Can I?
Yeah.
Okay, so
Yeah.
I'm only hijacked.
No, no. We like discussions.
Yeah.
Okay, so a definition of a publisher and what's most of the social web out there, they are different. Like if I write a paper and I publish it somewhere, there are also rules and laws that fall on the publisher and stuff like that. So when you say publisher, you really mean the publisher under the law of publication, or you mean just the web social network?
I just mean, I use publish much more loosely than that. Just putting something on the web.
Yeah, so when you say publish, it's kind of...
I see. I see.
It's a DMCA or whatever that falls on you, meaning like you basically just a reproducer of data. You're not a publisher that stands behind whatever written. So if
I see what you're saying. Like,
if I write a scientific paper and publish with you, then you're not a publisher that stands behind what I've written.
no.
You're not New York Times that says to, I give an example of a newspaper that has to stand, there are laws that prohibit it from doing all sorts of things like slander and blah, 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 blah. You're just a social network and therefore you're protected by the Digital Acts.
Well, yes, Section 230 would apply here, where he's just providing others content as a service. It's not his own speech. If that speech breaks the law, the person who said it broke the law, not Manton.
Yeah.
Good. This is the question. So you're not a publisher per se.
No, not at all. In fact, and yeah, Section 230, I mean, we'll see what happens with that.
We'll see.
You know, it's
You have to say what
days
this is interesting.
might be numbered, I don't know. It's held for a long time, but to be honest, I'm so small, I don't even worry about that. Like, no one has sued me in 8 years. Like, it's just, it's unlikely that I'll run into a problem, but yeah, I use the word publish, not like a publisher. And in fact, when I founded Micro.blog, I worked with lawyers on the terms of service, and we went back and forth, and one of the things that I insisted on is that we add a section in the terms of service that says, we do not own your content. We are not, we're not gonna, we only have the right to put it in the timeline in Micro.blog. That's it. We don't own it. We're not gonna train AI on it. I mean, this is before AI, but I consider the user's content is their own. They should have their own domain. And I'll talk about this in a second, but I do think there are things that a social network can do in terms of curating content, but it's your content, and you can put it on the web. Yeah.
Apologies for the interruption.
No, it's cool.
No, they're good questions, don't worry.
Yeah, so personal domain names, right? The control is not really about running your own server, it's about domain names. Even if you have a Mastodon server and a community that you love, you should still have your own blog, your own domain name, in my opinion. So the default handle on Micro.blog for everybody that has a Micro.blog account, you get a Fediverse handle like this, it's username at Micro.blog. But if you have your own domain name, when we host your blog, your ActivityPub handle can use that domain name. So this is mine, it's a little bit redundant, but Manton@manton.org, simple, looks like an email address, but it could be anything. You could make up anything at your own domain name, and that can be your handle that people will find.
And I assume you do some sort of certificate authority SSL lookup to verify they have the right to claim they're that person, basically.
Yeah, and we said that's all really handled if you host your blog, we'll set up the SSL certificate for you. At that point, you pointed your DNS to our server. We can handle all the ActivityPub stuff behind the scenes and verify the domain. So Micro.blog, I mean, it's only one platform, but we can host like thousands of domain names for people. And I think another thing that makes Micro.blog kind of unique is just that it's rooted in the web and HTML. Micro.blog is always about the web first. It's about hypertext and links. So it looks like this. This is me editing a post on Micro.blog. It's a short post, has a little bit of text, has a link. I wrote this with Markdown, so it has a link. It has a Markdown block quote. And you could use HTML directly, but kind of by default use Markdown. And this is what it looks like when it goes to my blog. The publishing, not publishing that way, but publishing through the web platform. We use Hugo, so you post in Markdown, it gets your blog together, passes through Hugo, so all the templates and themes can be applied. You can customize those. So then it looks like this, and it ends up as a static HTML on servers separate from the Micro.blog platform. And that's been really useful for performance, but it's also been useful recently because we've had a lot of people that don't really want their content hosted in the United States anymore. So we were able to roll out EU servers. So if someone wanted, if they just felt better about having their blog on a server in Europe, they could enable that. And our sort of publishing workflow would still work. So the same post, this is what it looks like via ActivityPub on Mastodon. So when there's a choice for how to do something, like we do it in the way that is most like the web. So links and block quotes, image tags. There's not new data structures, it's just web stuff. Photo posts use image tags, quotes use block quote. And this is in Mastodon, actually looks really good. Even though you can't create a post exactly like this in Mastodon, it does display the HTML. And so we carry this over to cross-posting platforms where possible. This is another short Micro.blog post. I made it this morning. This is what it looks like on my blog, and this is what it looks like in a screenshot on Bluesky. We convert those HTML links to Bluesky facets, so that it's an inline link on Bluesky
And that,
as well.
that links to our Bluesky handle.
Yeah, I think so.
So it auto-converts.
Oh, actually, that actually links to the website.
Oh, just to our website.
Yeah, just to the website.
Well, that's the easiest. You don't have to change it on each platform to find our handle.
Right.
I was like, oh, you're a wizard if you'd already got it doing that.
Yeah, people have asked for that from time to time. Like, you want to mention somebody, and then on every cross-posted platform, it translates the username to the right. And it is possible, but it is tricky because we have to know. By default, we don't know enough to do the translation.
Well, right.
But if, for example, you used Micro.blog and you signed in and you enabled cross-posting, then Micro.blog would then know your Bluesky account and it could do that translation. Anyway, we haven't done it, but.
Yeah, actually,
Yeah.
this is a sidebar, kind of a nerdy architecture thing, but I'm curious because you do support so many protocols. Do you use like a provider architecture, and would it even be possible because you're using provider architecture that a third party could write a new provider if a new service came along?
Not yet. I would love that to be possible, but not right now. It's all sort of cobbled together.
Aren't quite at the Terraform point of, yes, it will work on any of the major clouds. Not quite there yet.
Not quite there yet, no. I want to return to that blog post I had at the very beginning, because I think in hindsight, this old post, it kind of says a lot. So it says, South by Southwest Interactive started today. The title in bold actually wasn't there in the original blog post. There was no title. But somewhere between migrating posts between different platforms, blogging platforms, something created that title and I haven't deleted it. What?
Like it had to fill in a title.
It had to fill, there's like the database couldn't be blank and it had to do something. I want to say it was movable type. I switched to movable type as one of my early blogging platforms.
Maybe it just found your H1 tag and was like, that's the title.
Well, no, in this case, it's literally the first 4 words of the post. So,
I see.
but it could have done something clever like that also.
I also like how you say weblog instead of blog.
Yeah,
Yeah, weblog, man.
It's a different time.
different time. It really was. And
Well,
it's
yeah, and literally it's been in the news just recently that the man responsible for Interactive Hugh Forrest was just let go by South by Southwest. So
oh yeah, I did see that. Yeah, wow.
yeah,
That's
most
a long time.
people who think it was a big mistake that anything worthwhile about interactive was because of Hugh's influence. So.
Yeah, I mean, it's a bit amazing. I mean, yeah, it's been so long. I mean, 2002. It feels like a lifetime ago. But the funny thing about this post too is that I talked about as if there weren't enough blogs around, and it's just looking back, there just really were hardly any blogs in 2002. Actually, there's just so many more people.
But I'm trying to think if I even like had regular blogs I regularly visited yet.
It was still pretty early, so I find this post just kind of hilarious.
Fair. I think that was around the time that everybody started doing live journal, and like everybody started having their own.
Yeah, my friends all started the live journal wave
Yeah.
right around then. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm kind of disappointed that I obviously knew about LiveJournal, but I was never active on it. I kind of wish I was, because I was.
Did you know it's all still there, but it all lives on servers in Moscow now. Every American teenager's posts are now on a Russian server.
Being trained on AI.
And by the way, I'll tell you, because I'm me, I actually went back to that old account and added like strong passwords and two-factor and took it off the public internet. Most of those accounts have not done that.
Yeah.
They're getting by.
Graveyard.
I mean, I'm torn because I hate it when a whole platform goes away and just everything's everything
It is wild because half the links on those live journals are broken now.
Oh, I'm sure.
Yeah.
More than half. Like, you don't have to go very far back.
Well, even most of
where
my
almost-
posts, it'll be like I linked to some video and it's like dead link, or a link is dead link,
Yeah.
dead video.
Yeah, link is quite a big problem. And actually, there's some features that I've added to Micro.blog specifically around this. So when you link to something, it archives the web page you're linking to. And it downloads like the images, CSS, JavaScript, everything. So it has a copy.
You're your little own Wayback Machine.
It's my own little Wayback Machine. I mean, the Internet Archive is incredible, right? But I actually think there should be more than one Internet Archive.
Well, considering that the publishing industry keeps suing them, yes, we do need more.
That's a
than
great
one.
point, also. And I mean, I don't claim to be, I'll never be as big as the Internet Archive. I don't want to be, but I do think there is something to having, like a little copy of your personal internet, things that you've linked to, and so by default, nothing really happens. Like on our servers, we've just archived all this stuff, but you can, you could link to it later if you wanted to. You could also, if later you find out that the original link broke, there's a button in Micro.blog that'll update your post to link to the archived copy. So it can be useful. So yeah, this post, there wasn't a title, which I found interesting. It was a short post. It's like something you would find on X or Threads or Mastodon. And I think there's just some basic guidelines that people that want to use their blog for microblogging like this can follow. No titles, short posts. 300 characters or less is generally what Micro.blog uses. If it's a quote post, like where there's a block quote, we increase that to 600. And of course, it's a blog. You can type as much as you want. You can add a title. You can do all these things. But by default, it kind of encourages this microblog format. And yeah, inline HTML for styles, images, RSS or JSON feeds. Didn't want to reinvent the wheel. There's a lot of kind of Twitter competitors that have come and gone, and they invented a new format and it's complicated spec and no one adopts it, and then it kind of fades away. If we start with blogs, all the basics are built in, right? There's no titles, just leave the title blank and everything works. And in the RSS spec, this is going back years also, the title is optional. Many modern blog systems kind of assumed there would be a title, but like if you look at the spec, it says title or description. Description is the post content itself. And even some early tools like Radio Userland from 2003 is developed by Dave Weiner. His company, Userland. Blogging used to kind of work this way without titles. So there's no title field in the user interface. And I think we can get back to some of those things. Some of the things that were good about like the old blogosphere and apply them to the modern world. And I think we can do more specifically for microblogging. A few years ago, Brent Simmons, who developed the feed reader NetNewsWire, approached me about whether it was time for kind of a modern version of RSS based on JSON. So many developers now don't really know, they don't deal with XML. They don't want to deal with the XML parser, but JSON is just sort of natively supported everywhere. And the result was JSON feed. And we wanted to call out Microblog specifically. So in the spec, it talks about there's so much writing today is Twitter-like. Could be plain text, could be styled, but it's short stuff. So on the opposite side of microblogging, indie microblogging are these ad-based platforms. I'm just saying Twitter and Facebook in this case. And I always say Twitter. I can't, when I write, I say Twitter/X, and I just can't bring myself to say X because it just doesn't feel right. But I just use these as examples. Twitter is this kind of, this walled garden, right, where tweets only exist at twitter.com, x.com URLs. And if Twitter bans you from the platform, your tweets are gone, right? The URLs break. You can't take the tweets anywhere like you can with posts to your own domain name. And because of this, I think Twitter almost never removes anyone's account either, even when they should. And on the other side, you have Meta's vision for the future, which I think is also quite dismal, and this is starting to come into focus now. This was an article in the Financial Times. Meta is betting that characters generated by artificial intelligence will fill its social media platforms in the next few years. And there's been some more talk about this, including Mark Zuckerberg just talking about it in an interview a week or two ago. In the age of AI, content will be abundant, right? Ad-based platforms feed off abundance. They print money faster when they can fill ad inventory. There can never be too much content for algorithmic timelines. There's more data to rank for engagement, more data to funnel through the outrage machine, to see what sticks. So algorithmic timelines, which Meta is so focused on, they'll always trend toward AI slop. It's infinite content, some AI generated, and they wanted to use up all of our attention. With everything driven by algorithms, I think there'll be less human oversight, even than there is now. Mike Monteiro, someone who was really critical of Twitter leadership years ago, and he wrote about, Twitter is blind to the voices silenced by hate and intimidation. Anyone who's ever tended a garden knows that for the good stuff to grow, you have to deal with the bad stuff. You can't let the weeds choke the vegetables. And so with walled gardens, like with closed APIs, like Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, even the App Store, usually they become developer hostile platforms. And that's what frustrated me about Twitter, going back to the first few slides when I was complaining. Twitter and now X, they're closed platforms. They're not just closed, it's a walled garden that is full of weeds. And imagine instead a platform based on blogs with all the open formats, protocols I've been talking about. You post your own domain name, and your writing is independent of any one platform. So it's not a walled garden, I call it kind of an open garden. Flowers and plants on the inside of the garden are the same as the flowers that grow outside. The soil's the same, whether your blog is hosted on Micro.blog, whether it's hosted on WordPress, Ghost, your own blogging platform. It's made of the same web stuff. A tweet can only exist natively on x.com, right? But a microblog post is the same everywhere, inside and outside the garden. And so that gives us the freedom to pull the weeds on Micro.blog. We can curate the social network. We can tend the garden knowing people have choices of where to post. And so we tried to do a few things a little differently, not copying all the features from Twitter and other big platforms. It's not a popularity contest. There's no follower counts. There's no algorithms, no likes, no ads. I think ad-based platforms, they have incentives for engagement, right?
Yeah, how am I going to get addicted to your service? What is this?
How do you get the celebrities in?
No celebrities, unfortunately. That's the price we pay. But yeah, our business, it's not based on ads. We don't need that extra engagement. It's slower, sort of quieter space on the web with posts written by humans. This is a screenshot of the Discover page of Micro.blog. We manually curate this page, highlighting posts to help people discover users to follow. So again, no algorithms for discovery. And I think every platform can make their own decisions around like what features they're going to build and curation. So there's a growing list of web-friendly blog-based platforms that support ActivityPub. WordPress is a big one. That's baked in now. There's a plugin. It's also built into WordPress.com.
I used to play with the janky plugin back in the day.
Oh, yeah.
It's nice to hear it has native support now.
Yeah, it's really improved a lot. I mean, he's been working on it, and he was hired by Automatic to like work full time on the plugin. So it's really come a long way. And then Ghost they've been chronicling like every week their progress on ActivityPub.
We've actually been thinking about moving our website to Ghost.
To Ghost,
it looks
yeah.
like a pretty exciting product.
It really seems good. I mean, of course, I would do things a little differently, and I did do things a little different with Micro.blog. But Ghost, especially the newsletter stuff that they have.
That's the thing that really excited
yeah.
me manage an email list automatically and it's in sync with your blog post. That's
Yeah.
incredible.
Yeah. So yeah, both of those support ActivityPub. Ghost is still sort of in beta, but they've made great progress on it. And so we have the social side of the open web pioneered by Mastodon, kind of rethinking social for smaller platforms and communities. And I feel like we're kind of meeting them in the middle with traditional blogs. So social can emphasize conversations and replies, and the blogs can emphasize what they're good at with permanence and owning your content. So that's what I'm trying to do with Micro.blog, kind of a quieter, maybe slower corner of the open web centered around blog hosting, but still connected to all these other platforms. Also earlier this year launched Micro.1, which is also the domain name, and it's a special subscription with almost everything on Micro.blog for just $1 a month. I'm really excited to get more people blogging and checking that out. So that includes blog hosting, almost every feature, and ActivityPub support too, so people can follow you. So that's what I was going to talk about. So thanks.
We
had
have
questions?
a lot of questions.
We had
for
questions,
you,
but we have more.
There anybody who has a question that's not been asked yet, or anybody who's not talked yet who has a question for Manton? I know we've covered a lot, so it's fine if the answer is no, but I want to make sure everybody gets their shot.
I have a quick story because I'm a micro
Oh,
user.
yes.
Which is, I have another friend who uses Micro.blog. You always say the dot.
I always say the dot, but you don't. A lot of people leave it out. It's fine.
But yeah, so so we both use Micro.blog, and then we also both have Mastodon accounts, and we also both have Bluesky accounts, and all of them follow each other. And I had a conversation with this other person, and to this day, I don't know which platform we had the conversation on because it appeared everywhere. And so I think it's possible that I saw it on Mastodon and replied, but he might have originally posted on Bluesky. But because it's all hooked together, we actually hit that sweet spot where it's just people and we don't care. And that makes me really happy. So.
That was great to
hit
hear.
the point where somebody emails you and you don't necessarily know what email client they use to email you.
Yeah.
Probably Gmail. Let's be
Probably
honest.
Gmail,
No.
but
Yeah, no, that's great. I love hearing that. That's awesome. And I think eventually, yeah, it will be like that as things get easier for more people and it becomes more mainstream. You shouldn't have to think about what platform someone is on.
Yeah, I just wanted to ask about funding.
Mhm.
I guess you mentioned that this is kind of support, pay for the service.
Yep.
What kind of, do you have issues with funding and kind of like think about some money, or what kind of, when you have a platform vertical like this,
Yeah.
what kind of issues you run into or how do you address that?
So yeah, I actually really like that the business is people pay us for blog hosting, basically. So I mentioned the $1 a month. Most people are at the $5 a month plan because the $1 a month is really new. We have a $5 a month plan, $10 a month, a little bit higher for like family plans and teams. But I've always loved that $5 a month. It's just a nice number. It's just it feels. I've always loved it. So that's 100% of the funding is customers. I guess I've thought about what I would do, like when I'm approached, because people have reached out, like, are you interested in VC money and whatnot. Personally, I don't think I'm a very good fit for big investment because it's just not going to be. I think it's going to be a really nice, profitable business that I love and that my customers hopefully love, but it's never going to be millions and millions and billions of dollars. So I don't think it's worth anyone's time. And I love owning it. I love the fact that I can make decisions that I think are in the best interest of my users, and everybody's happy. It's just very well aligned. Like what I was trying to say about ad-based platforms is just like there's this inherent conflict that will always be there, where the customers and the business model is not aligned with user interests. And so, yeah.
So far you haven't had a problem with just being just paying for subscriptions?
No, it's good. I mean, we're still growing. Of course, I mean, I'd love to grow more. I'd love to have twice the number of subscriptions that we have, to be honest, because we could do so much more. I'm working with 2 contractors right now. I mean, I wish I could pay them full time. So more money would be great, but I think it's good for us being funded by users.
You mean you're cool with sustainable, stable growth instead of infinite returns? That doesn't sound very American, my friend.
Yeah, it's the, I love the platform that we built, and I want to keep working on it forever, so things have to stay in balance, you know, can't get out of whack.
I guess one thing I do wonder is somebody who does a lot of coding for a very small company myself, do you ever feel overwhelmed by the workload, especially security concerns or AI bot concerns, or?
Yes, I mean, there's always way too much work. It's definitely overwhelming, and there are problems. Like just a week ago, I made a careless error, and like we had downtime for whatever, half an hour. And downtime happens. I mean, users are usually very understanding. But that is a moment where like I got to drop everything. Was I having dinner? It doesn't matter. Like
Right.
Everything has to be. And security is the same kind of thing.
And right, and even if your SLA doesn't guarantee 99.99% uptime, you know, you still feel an obligation to get it back up.
Absolutely. And I mean, if it's down too much, people will.
Right. Doesn't matter what the SLA says. If it's down too much, people will get frustrated.
Yeah. And you know, I'm really proud that you can move all your content and export easily and that sort of thing. But of course, we'd love to have people as customers. Yeah, that part that can be very stressful. We've been pretty lucky with security. Knock on wood so far.
Mostly leveraging, choosing good open source projects, and that gives you a lot of the security right there.
Hopefully. I mean, there could always be design flaws in architecture and logging in and stuff like that. But so far, we've been pretty lucky. I haven't had any problems with AI bots yet.
Are you too small for them to have noticed you?
So, I don't know. That's a good question because, I mean, a big part of what AI is trained on is
like Reddit and Twitter. Part of why they lock down their APIs is there is a real problem with these AI bots. Like the maintainer of curl was even just complaining he's getting endless AI slop security vulnerability submission tickets that he's just like, I want to tear my hair out.
Yeah, it's going to be something we're gonna have to navigate. Yeah, everything's about to change with what AI's impact on all this is going to be. The only problem I've really run into with server traffic is sort of hackers that are trying to exploit like old WordPress bugs and things like that. So I'll look at my logs and there'll be like thousands and thousands of requests for like WP admin something. Or they'll try all these, I guess they're like known paths of like password files and things like that. So if I'm watching my logs and this kind of event happens where a bunch of scripts are, I mean, it's almost like a denial of service attack. It's just massive amounts of traffic.
People hoping that somebody didn't configure HT
Exactly.
access and they can access a directory.
Exactly. And there's just, I mean, maybe you wouldn't be surprised, but I was shocked at like just the number of requests that come through. And also, they don't know, like, these are requests not to Micro.blog, but to individual people's blogs, right? And so the same hacky request might go to like 1,000 people's blogs, but those are all, I'm hosting all of those, so they're all coming to me. So it's kind of wild, and I've had to make some optimizations from time to time so that dealing with those responses is like instant. You know, they get a response immediately. Like it's not like it doesn't trigger like a database lookup or anything crazy.
You see the literal, you know, idempotency. You see the exact same request come in like 100 times in 2 seconds. It's like that's probably not real.
Yeah, it's and that's not really even an AI problem. So that's just people are terrible on the internet.
You said this started because the applications, there are so many applications and they were not open. And you mentioned some applications that you have on your Micro.blog. how are those applications written? Can you give some examples and talk more about them?
Oh yeah.
And what
So
language and stuff like that?
yeah, I would say of those 5 that I listed, 3 are now written in React Native, mostly JavaScript, and then a little bit of like on the iPhone app, there's a little bit of native Objective-C code in it. The original app, I'm a Mac developer and iOS developer going back a long time, so the original was written in Objective-C. Our app Sunless written in Swift. But the 3 apps that are updated the most, which is the main Microblogging app, Epilogue, our app for keeping track of books you're reading and blogging about, and Strata are all written in React Native. And mostly that was just because of getting Android for, it's like being able to have essentially one code base and having it ship on iOS and Android is just a huge thing. Personally, I don't love React Native, but I'm willing to deal with the way it works to get cross-platform.
How many more web applications you're aware of? Like hundreds, thousands?
For like the Fediverse and for like other different, just for Micro.blog? Not thousands, there's people come and go, like people will develop an app and maybe they'll lose interest and it's not well maintained. We're not big enough that there's like a really good market for like commercial software, unfortunately. So yeah, there's a handful that are well developed. There's a brand new one for iOS called Microsocial. It's really great, and that's written in Swift. I think it's written in Swift UI.
Any more questions? Fine, if not,
Kind of tangential, but you mentioned the idea of everyone should kind of have their own little mini web archive. Do you know any easy ways to do that?
No, I'm
sure.
sure.
Very passive now.
Oh yeah. No, I mean I'm sure you can find something
I mean, I've
to
heard
run
people
on.
talking for years of essentially trying to make web browsers that essentially would double as personal data stores, so
Oh,
your
yeah.
browser can be your own publisher, but none of those projects have gotten to a point that I've seen any kind of critical momentum take off on it.
Yeah, I mean I think it makes so much sense. Yeah, I agree. I don't know why more people haven't done that. My archiving, I just wrote it all myself, and it's fairly constrained. Like it.
CSS to get the job done, and that's about it. So
Okay.
I can't
Yeah.
do something like that.
Yeah. Everyone's vibe coding now. Just throw it at ChatGPT
I'm
and.
sure that'll go great.
Hey, look, for all the actual programmers, there's going to be a lot of work cleaning up all those broken code bases over the next 3 to 5 years.
That's the silver lining.
But yeah, but I'm sure there is something. I know there's a lot of projects around like bookmark archiving, and there's got to be something that runs like a little mini
I
internet
was just
archive.
curious if you had anything you'd recommend. Or
Can't think of anything. Like I said,
The tool that the folks who built archive.org search, like archive feature, that's a browser plugin that will record your.
but that sends it to archive, doesn't it?
No, it saves it.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
nice.
Well, that's interesting. I
That's
did
great.
not know that. Thank you.
Cool. Actually,
Very cool.
Dude, I used to use we don't use NetNewsWire now, but I used to use it back
The old days. Yeah.
in the early days. And it used to have a feature where you would just turn it on and it would keep a local archive of every single thing that you fetched. Both the RSS feed
yeah.
and it would load and I have like years of like thousands of RSS feeds that I subscribe to, and it's
Yeah.
just sitting there in a folder.
That's great.
And it's funny that, I wonder if that'll ever come back like in these reader apps.
Makes a lot of sense to me personally. I mean, it's just handy to have
No,
a snapshot
I
of
remember
it.
that before, like, Facebook and modern social media blew up, I remember that, all the cool kids, like, RSS feeds, and then they kind of vanished when Facebook blew up. But really, I'm kind of like, maybe we all should have listened to the genius known as Aaron Schwartz. That might have been an idea we should have stuck with.
I think we were kind of joking about AI a little bit, and I overheard some other conversations about it. But I think it is fascinating that you basically have all the world's knowledge in this model, right? And so if we can do that, surely we can have an archive of the websites we visit. It's like a very much more constrained problem. We're not talking about all world knowledge, all websites, just the ones that I personally care
there are
about.
tools out there to archive, like Wikipedia. I've seen a lot of people mention
Mhm.
that as like, that's a good thing to have. If you have an internet outage, you still have access to some basic
is like 10
Yep.
gigs. You can literally just download it offline.
Right, but then,
Well, that is
those
if you
are-
don't want the full talk history. It's much larger if you want the full talk history.
So I've heard. But yeah, I don't know if those are universal or if they're specific to like Wikipedia, for example. But
I don't know. I've never looked at it. I should look at that more closely.
I mean, I'll be looking into it because that was a really cool idea.
Cool.
I like that.
Yeah, good luck.
Thanks.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Thanks, everybody.
Yeah, and I guess I'll just say, everybody, anybody parked in the garage who needs a parking voucher, I have it. And also, if any of you can stick around, we usually go over to the lobby bar there and chat and get to know each other for a bit. So I hope some of you will stick around. If not, we'll see you next month. And thank you so much, man.